In 1953, South Korea was poorer than some parts of sub-Saharan Africa. The entire country had been burned to the ground. There was almost no industry, almost no infrastructure, and almost no hope. The average South Korean earned less than $100 a year. Experts at the time said the country would never recover. The World Bank even called it a hopeless case, but here is what makes this story truly unbelievable. Just 60 years later, South Korea became the world's 12th largest economy. It built global giants like Samsung, Hyundai, and LG. And today, its culture, its music, its films, its food has conquered the entire planet. So how did a tiny, war-destroyed country with absolutely nothing turn into one of the most powerful nations on Earth? That is exactly what we are going to find out. To understand the miracle, you first have to understand just how bad things were. The Korean War ended in 1953, and it left the country in complete ruins. Millions of people had died. Entire cities were gone. Factories, roads, schools, and all destroyed. The country was divided in two, and the southern half had very little of the natural resources or industry that the north had kept. South Korea was starting from almost zero, but then something happened that would change everything. A man named Park Chung-hee came to power in 1961. Now, he was not a perfect leader, not at all. He ruled with an iron fist, and democracy took a backseat during his time. But what he did for the economy was nothing short of extraordinary. He looked at his broken country and made a decision that most leaders would never dare to make. He decided South Korea would not wait for things to slowly improve. Instead, the government would actively build the economy, choosing industries, funding companies, and pushing the country to compete on the world stage. This was the birth of what economists now call the developmental state. Park Chung-hee's government picked a small group of Korean companies and gave them government loans, tax benefits, and protection from foreign competition. These companies were called Chaebols, and you already know their names. Samsung started as a small trading company selling noodles and dried fish. Hyundai was a small construction firm. LG began by making face cream. But with government support and enormous ambition, these companies grew into global giants. The government essentially made a bet. Support these companies now, and they will take South Korea to the world. And the bet paid off. South Korea's economy grew at an average of 9% every single year for almost 30 years straight. To put that in perspective, most healthy economies grow at 2 or 3%. 9% is almost unheard of. Economists gave this period a name, the Miracle on the Han River, named after the river that runs through Seoul. Education played a massive role too. Korean parents became obsessed with schooling. Even the poorest families pushed their children to study harder, longer, and smarter than anyone else. Within just one generation, South Korea went from having widespread illiteracy to having one of the most educated workforces on the entire planet. But the story gets even more dramatic. In 1997, a massive financial crisis hit Asia. South Korea was hit so hard that it had to go to the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and ask for a $57 billion bailout. It was one of the most humiliating moments in the country's modern history. And here is where the story becomes truly incredible. Rather than giving up, ordinary South Korean citizens did something almost no other country has ever done. Millions of people, grandmothers, factory workers, students, voluntarily donated their personal gold, jewelry to help pay back the national debt. Wedding rings, necklaces, trophies, medals. People handed them over because they believed in their country. The government collected over 200 tons of gold from its own people. South Korea paid back the IMF loan 3 years early. From that moment, the country never looked back. Today, Samsung alone generates revenue bigger than the GDP of many countries. Korean pop music, K-pop, is a multi-billion-dollar global industry. The movie Parasite became the first non-English film to win the Oscar for Best Picture. Korean food, Korean fashion, Korean drama, the whole world is paying attention. A country that experts called hopeless is now setting the trends that the rest of the world follows. The story of South Korea is proof that where you start does not determine where you finish. It is proof that the right decisions, made with discipline and sacrifice, can transform an entire nation in a single lifetime. And it makes you wonder, what other countries are sitting on an untold miracle right now? If this story gave you something to think about, hit that like button and subscribe, because every week we bring you stories just like this one. Stories that school never taught you, but that change the way you see the world. and drop a comment below. Which country's rise do you want us to cover next?